All right, guys, and welcome into Talking SEC Football. I'm your host, Kenneth, and I will be gladly joining the Mark Rogers TV Talking All Things SEC. Just finishing up the game here with Tennessee and Bowling Green. We got about 5 minutes left in the game. Cedric Tillman just scored for Tennessee, pushing that lead out 38-6. And once this game goes final, I'll have the full stats here in just a moment. But just to kind of take a look at where things are right now, Tennessee has about 437 yards of total offense, 140 passing, and looks like about almost 300 yards rushing. For Bowling Green, about 200 yards total offense, 187 passing, only 7 yards. We know in college football the sacks comes off of the rushing stats. So as this game kind of winds down here, just really, really interested to kind of see where Tennessee fans see their ball club after this game. So would love to get your comments, love to get your thoughts, and let's talk some SEC football. Taking a look at Joe Milton's numbers in the first half, I think they just flashed that up here, so let me give you that. First half, 10 for 15, 100 yards passing, no touchdowns, no INTs. In the second half, only completed just that one pass here to the wide receiver for the touchdown. 1 for 8, 40 yards in the second half. Guys, that is not good football, no matter how you try to slice it there. And bear with me. I'm just getting a couple of things set up here so I can kind of hopefully keep a monitor on this game as it starts to wind down here. Okay, let's get that muted there. Okay. All right, and they're just talking about all the transfers that have left Tennessee: Wanye Morris, Jameer Johnson. Looking forward to seeing the stats in this ball game here, because what I saw from this Tennessee team against, and let me say this, Tennessee fans, this is the worst team that you'll probably play all season long. And to put up 38 points, I would say is extremely disappointing. And Josh Heupel, I know that there's a lot of things to clean up in that first game, so you don't want to be overly critical, but it just didn't look like they had any rhythm, any pace once they got past those first 15 plays. You could see that the offense really, really bogged down. Okay, just taking a look at that. Didn't see any comments anybody left. So, would really like to know from you fans, what do you think about this Tennessee performance? Okay, let's pull up some of the stats while we're waiting on that. Okay, so Joe Milton, 11 for 23, 140 yards. Looks like 6.1 yards per pass, one touchdown, no INT. Running backs, as expected in a game where you're at a complete advantage as far as your offensive line versus their defensive line. Both running backs, Small and Evans, went over 100 yards. Milton, 14 carries, 44 yards, did have the 2 touchdowns. Running backs looks like they combined for about 340 yards rushing and 3 rushing touchdowns. And we're getting down to the last 2:33 in this ball game. And Tennessee's just really trying to run out the clock here, which is the right thing to do because you want to keep your defense off the field for the rest of this game. You don't want your defense taking another snap in this ball game if absolutely necessary. You want to just, like they're doing, work some really short intermediate throws, keep that clock moving. We should see, I want to say, maybe 5, 6 more plays in this ball game before that's the end of the ball game. Nice run there by the running back. See, number 30. Okay, Hooker's in the ball game. So what we can pretty much say right now is Joe Milton's going to be the quarterback at Tennessee as long as he doesn't get injured. And there's not going to be a quarterback rotation there. You could see he got talking about Milton all the snaps in this ball game except for this final 2 minutes in the ball game. Okay, just got some comments there from some Tennessee fans. Yeah, let's talk about that. Looking at that, and I'm gonna put some of those comments up in the air here, talking about Milton here, and I'm gonna get to your comment right here because I thought this was really key here. So early on in the first quarter, I think it was, Milton had a wide receiver breaking open on a deep post and absolutely threw a horrible pass. Um, when you have the wide receiver that open, you just want to lead him. You don't want to overthrow it, but you just want to put some air under it. And the broadcaster did a great job talking about how flat his passes were. Did the same thing later on, right after halftime, where he threw another pass that should have been a wide open touchdown. I'm not going to completely bash Milton there on that. It's just I think that's more of a timing issue that you hope as a Tennessee fan that that's something that he can get worked out. Remember, he just transferred in, didn't get the benefits of spring practice or summer workouts. So not a lot of time to really get the chemistry with these wide receivers, but that's something that's going forward, especially before you get into conference play. You're definitely going to need to see him improve on. That was one of the issues coming from Michigan, that they talked about how he only has one speed on his passes, and that's a fastball, and really want to see him develop that going forward. Let's take a look at that Tennessee schedule here. I'm going to see if I can't get that pulled up here on my screen here while we're running out the clock. It looks like Tennessee just committed a turnover here. Looks like a bad snap there. So taking a look, and that game next week looks like it's going to be a 11 a.m. kickoff versus Pitt. We're calling that the Johnny Majors game. Then you got Tennessee Tech, it looks like, in week 3. And then you get into conference play. Big run there by Bowling Green. Basically, that should be. I think we're going to have one more snap here, and that's going to be the ball game here. I'm gonna put your question up here. What is my thoughts on where you think they are at? Okay, so I said coming into the season that I thought Tennessee was probably going to be a 6-win team. Um, and depending on how Josh Heupel was going to call the offense, and saw that he wanted to go up tempo early on in the ball game, just to kind of get his players used to that pace. But I thought it was absolutely a brilliant decision, backing off of that. Pardon me, because this Tennessee roster, we know, saw a lot of players transfer out, and especially in that front seven. I think you lost, whether it was due to transfer or suspension, I think it was 7 linebackers. So you really can't keep your defense on the field for a lot of snaps. So I think a really good job there by Heupel. Protect your defense as much as possible, because once you get into conference play, and I talked about this on my podcast, as far as looking at where Tennessee was, you're going to face from last season in conference play 5 of the 6 leading rushing offenses. The only one that you miss is Texas A&M, who finished second. But in a span of 6 weeks, you're going to play South Carolina, Ole Miss, Alabama. You get a bye week, and then you get Kentucky and Georgia. So you got to protect your defense as much as possible in these ball games. And I think we should have the final stats, hopefully posted, so I can give you guys a real good indication of where I think this team performed well and where they struggled. Like I said, coming into this ball game, Bowling Green was one of the worst teams in all of college football. I think we had them power rated out of all the Division One teams, 126, I believe, out of 130 plus teams. So this wasn't a real clean performance by the University of Tennessee whatsoever. Okay, so we do have basically the final stats, except time of possession that needs to be adjusted. Tennessee 7 for 15 on third down, 1 of 3 on fourth down, and one of those fourth down conversions, the running back was absolutely stoned right at the line of scrimmage. The offensive line got absolutely no push whatsoever. As far as total yards in the ball game, 471 yards for Tennessee, 219 against Bowling, 219 for Bowling Green, I should say. This passing game, 12 for 24. Guys, that's 50%. That is not good whatsoever. 6 yards per pass attempt. That's something that Coach Heupel's definitely going to have to get cleaned up here, going into next week's ball game, because you're going to face a very gritty, very hard-nosed team there in Pitt. And if your quarterback is only going to complete 50% of his passes, that's going to make for a very long day. Do like the rush attempts, because what it did was it kept your defense off the field. I'm going to add up your total plays on defense here. 61. That's actually pretty good as far as what your defense was on the field. So I was afraid for this Tennessee team that they were going to be on the field for a lot more snaps than that, and that would have been catastrophic considering who you have coming up in conference play. You need to get out of these first 3 games with as minimum of defensive snaps as possible, while working on some things that you want to do for your offense. Okay, Scott, if you could resend that, I'm not sure what your question is right there. So repost that, and I'll try to address that as best as I can. All right, so I think we got some individual stats here. So let's take a look. Yeah, Milton wound up finishing the game 11 for 23, 140 yards, 6.1 yards per average. And if you've listened to my podcast or heard me break down games, for a really good quarterback, you want that number to be anywhere from 9.5 to 10. And Milton was well below that. Let's see if we can see any standouts as far as the wide receivers go. We talked about Tillman basically getting 40 of those 48 yards on one pass, so not a great performance, and you could see that based on the fact that Milton just wasn't able to complete a high percentage of his passes. And your head coach there, Josh Heupel, could have really helped him out a lot. If you want to help your quarterback out, you throw a lot of quick screens, whether it's to the running backs or wide receivers. Just get your quarterback some confidence, because you can see Milton just did not look like he was playing with a lot of confidence here. Okay, thanks, Scott. I'll put that up here. Tennessee's in for a long season. I certainly think so, and I would think that this performance does not go a long way in changing that impression. I just talked about their schedule coming up. Let's get back to it, and I'll see here. Okay, so next week, and they do get an extended practice time where they don't have their next game until Saturday. Pitt has a game this weekend, so advantage should be for Tennessee in that matchup, and then a game that you absolutely need to win if you're a Vols fan against Tennessee Tech. And then you get into conference play. That game in Gainesville could really tell us a lot about this Tennessee ball club here. And then at Missouri, come home to face South Carolina, and then that's when the gauntlet start. Ole Miss, Alabama, Kentucky, Georgia. Pretty much once Tennessee gets past that Tennessee Tech game, they should only be favorites in two more contests. Well, three. The South Carolina will probably be a pick 'em, depending on how those two teams play at that point. But you're going to be Tennessee's going to be an underdog in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games, and then the game versus South Alabama and Vandy, depending on how this season goes. And I believe Mays, the center for Tennessee, went down with an ankle injury. Hopefully, we'll have something here in the post game notes about that injury. Looked like he wasn't able to put a lot of pressure on that knee. I'm sorry, on that ankle after the ball game. Yeah, I was just trying to check and see if there was any updates. Doesn't look to be any updates. So Eddie George. Yeah. So Eddie George actually coaches at Tennessee State and not Tennessee Tech. But yes, sir. Eddie George looking to rebuild that program there at Tennessee State, not Tennessee Tech. But yeah, Jermaine, thanks for checking in with the show. Hey, if you guys have any questions for me about this game, or if you guys want to talk about the upcoming games in the SEC this weekend, please drop them in the chat, and I'll gladly give you my thoughts on the SEC games coming up on this Labor Day weekend. Um, Looks like I got a question in here. Alabama Roll Tide. Um, thanks for checking out the show. Um, you know what? Since you asked about the Alabama quarterback, I'll give my thoughts here on Bryce Young. Comes from a powerhouse program there in California. And typically, you see those quarterbacks usually going to USC. So that tells you how far that USC program has fallen off over the last decade or so, especially since Clay Helton has taken over there. So if you guys want, I can kind of give you my thoughts on really the big matchups in the SEC this weekend. And it looks like we got a ACC SEC challenge this weekend with Alabama taking on Miami. You have Georgia, of course, taking on Clemson in the game of the weekend. And then finishing out the weekend, you have Ole Miss taking on Louisville. So could be a really good weekend for the SEC. And I expect the SEC to go no worse than 2-1 in those ball games. Sure. All right. Tell you what, we can talk about the Georgia Clemson game here in just a moment. But as far as that Alabama Miami game, I don't see this being much of a contest. Alabama in these neutral site games under Nick Saban typically wins by an average of 25 points, and the line is currently set at 19. De'Aaron King is coming off a torn ACL, has not had full contact practice yet, so his first live action will actually be Saturday afternoon at 2:00, 2:30 Central Time. And as far as the Georgia Clemson game, would love for you guys to check out my show. I actually just did our breakdowns of those games. You can catch that on our channel. If you go to our Twitter handle, Crunch Time VIP, you'll see the links for that that podcast, and where I really dove deep into this Georgia Clemson matchup. So here's how I kind of see that matchup. If Georgia tries to spread Clemson out with a lot of 3 and 4 wide receiver sets the entire game, don't think that's going to be a recipe for the Georgia Bulldogs to win, because where they have an advantage over Clemson is their running backs versus the Clemson linebackers. And what I would do in that ball game if I was the offensive coordinator, Todd Monken, for the University of Georgia, I would use a lot of 2 running back sets so I could keep those linebackers on the field, and I would throw wheel routes, swing passes, screens, and get those linebackers in space, because that's where you really can take an advantage. And Scott, yes, to answer your question, I will post that here in the link. Give me just a moment. Let's see. Thank you. So yeah, so Scott, here's where I think Georgia's going to make a huge mistake, and because all off season long we've heard about how JT Daniels was going to be the difference as far as Georgia being able to win these kind of matchups. I think that Munkin is going to try to spread Clemson out using 3 and 4 wide receiver sets where they absolutely do not have an advantage in this contest. And if you give me just a second, I'll get my notes here and I will gladly go over that. So Clemson linebackers, talented but not great in coverage. Their best coverage linebacker now plays for LSU and Mike Jones. So James Skowski, Brandon Spector, and Trent Simpson. I want to keep those three on the field as much as possible, and that's why I said go to a lot of two running back sets with Kendall Milton, Zamir White, and James Cook. Georgia's going to run. Scott, I'll gladly respond to that. Against this defensive line, I would say no. The four best defensive lines, or I should say front sevens, in any particular order, Georgia, fantastic against the run. Alabama's going to be really good against the run. Ohio State, despite what we saw tonight, should be really good against the run. And finally, Clemson. Clemson has two premier guys right there on that anchoring that defensive line, Miles Murphy and Brian Breezy. These guys will absolutely clog up the lane, and I don't think that Georgia's going to find a lot of great success running the ball in this contest. So I would say you're going to see. Okay, that's the Alabama fan talking about. They're gonna pass it a lot. I think early on, Alabama is definitely going to get Bryce comfortable with a lot of easy throws, and I think once they establish some of those quick screens to whether it's Brian Robinson or Trey Sanders, I think that's when you're going to see them take some of those deeper shots with John Mechie and those talented group of wide receivers. King Lee, how you doing? Go UF. Florida really haven't forgotten Florida, and I will say that I did pick Florida to finish third in the SEC East this year behind Kentucky, and the reason for that was look at who they played in their cross divisional matchups. They get Alabama coming to Gainesville and then have to go to Death Valley to face LSU. Florida could easily lose both of those games, and I honestly could see Florida losing 4 conference games this year, including the cocktail party against Georgia and against the Kentucky Wildcats. I think Kentucky, along with Ole Miss, are going to be two surprising teams in the SEC this year. So I don't foresee, to post Tommy's comments here, I do not see Florida winning the SEC East or the SEC this year. But would love to hear your reasons why. So please drop those in the chat, and I will gladly put those up. Okay, so Tommy, here's why, and I'm glad you posted that. And here's why I picked Kentucky to finish second in the East behind Georgia. It's because Kentucky, their run game was one of the top 3, if I'm looking at it correctly, in the SEC last year. So averaging almost 200 yards rushing when everybody knew that Kentucky could not throw the forward pass last year. Bring in Will Levis, the transfer from LSU to come in and play left tackle, Dar Rosenthal. Kentucky will have one of the top three offensive lines in the SEC this year. So expect to see Chris Rodriguez, their talented running back, smoke as well to get some huge running lanes. And don't lose sight that Wan'Dale Robinson, the transfer from Nebraska, being able to stretch the defense from a vertical standpoint will only free up that defense. And honestly, I would say this to Florida fans, your quarterback situation is still up in the air. I have heard from several sources there that Emory Jones has not looked really good in camp, and listening to the comments from Dan Mullen, Anthony Richardson is going to see a lot of playing time. And I would not be surprised if Anthony Richardson is not the starting quarterback for the University of Florida by the time you guys go to Jacksonville to take on the University of Georgia. Do I see Alabama winning it all this year? As long as Nick Saban is the head coach of the University of Alabama, you got to put them in the mix to win the championship. I think it's too early to tell. I haven't seen enough of Bryce Young yet. The limited snaps that he played last year wasn't enough to really get a real good feel for what he's going to be. But when you're playing with that much talent, it's hard not to think that Alabama won't be in contention. Spent a lot of time watching that Ohio State Minnesota game. If that Minnesota running back does not go out with an ankle injury, I think that game absolutely turns and goes a completely different direction there. So do not be surprised to see Ohio State kind of rectify that. But that game next weekend, and I will be breaking that game down. I know this is talking SEC, but you asked, could Alabama win it all? Certainly they could. Kentucky is better than UF. I don't see it. I didn't say better. I'll say they have a better schedule to where look at who Kentucky plays in their crossover games. And if you give me just a moment, I will gladly pull that up here because now Kentucky does play LSU as a crossover opponent, but then they get, let's see, who do they draw else out of? They draw Mississippi State. So while I could see Kentucky splitting with LSU and Mississippi State, I do not see Florida at all beating Alabama or right now LSU. Now, we still got to see how LSU pans out, but that's going to be very significant. UF had the second most turnovers last year. Yeah, and they also gave up, and I think I may still have my notes here. The University of Florida gave up, here we go. Glad you brought that up. So as far as scoring defense, they gave up 30.8 points per game on defense last year. That was 8th in the SEC. Compare that with Kentucky. Kentucky gave up 25.9 points per game, 5th in the SEC. So any questions you want to break down as far as Florida? Here's what I said this on my show, and I will gladly say it here. There are 3 things that I would guarantee you about the University of Florida this year. Florida will not have the worst rushing attack. Let's see, where did Florida finish last year? 11th, 131.3 yards per game on the ground. That was 11th in the SEC. That number will absolutely be better this year because you have 2 mobile quarterbacks instead of Kyle Trask. But here's what I will absolutely guarantee you will not see from the University of Florida this year. In SEC games, that's 8 conference games, the Florida Gators would not average 378.6 yards per game passing. And Florida will not average 39.8 points per game in their 8 conference games. I would absolutely guarantee that right now because this Florida offense will not be that explosive, losing a generational type tight end in Kyle Pitts. Kyle Trask, who played as well at the quarterback position that the University of Florida has had since Daniel Werfel, and Kadarius Toney. I do not see anybody on that outside for the University of Florida that is proven to step up and fill those shoes. Jacob Copeland, okay, nice wide receiver, but here's his stats from last year: 23 receptions, 435 yards. You tell me that's your number one wide receiver, I'll tell you that's not going to be good enough. Tommy, thanks. I appreciate the comments, and hopefully you'll and continue to watch the show. So, so that's where the difference for Florida is for me. It's a schedule advantage for Kentucky, and it's also Kentucky. Really, if they get anything from the passing game, is going to be better than what they were last year. So that's where that kind of falls for me. Now, this Kentucky defense, this Florida defense, let's talk about that from last year. Kentucky and Florida. So let's compare the two. Kentucky gave up, Kentucky was actually the best pass defense in the SEC, only allowing 224.6 yards per game, while Florida was 8th in passing, allowing 257.5. And that's just the conference game. So that didn't include the SEC championship. This Florida defense was absolutely horrible against the run, and any Florida fan will know that. 10th in the SEC, giving up almost 171 yards on the ground. And total defense, Florida, you were 9th in the SEC. There's only 14 teams, and you gave up 428 yards per game. That puts you in the same category with Vanderbilt, Tennessee, South Carolina, and Arkansas. That's where you were last year. No, Tommy, I did not see the targeting call that was missed. I'll have to go back and watch that on the replay here tonight. Alabama Roll Tide, the quarterback is looking good in camp. Oh, absolutely. From everything that I've heard on the reports, Bryce Young has absolutely been lighting it up in camp. But you want to see that transfer over against opponents, because you can kind of tailor those practices to where all your quarterbacks look good. I think this matchup against Miami is a complete mismatch. I do not expect the Miami corners in this ball game to be able to hold up against this Alabama passing attack. And especially because, think about this, Miami lost their 2 best pass rushers from last year, Quincy Roche and Jalen Phillips. Both of those young men are playing in the NFL right now. So the leading sacker for the University of Miami, and I want to make sure I get this absolutely correct here, is Al Blades, who plays defensive back with 2 sacks. So Miami cannot get natural pass rush. And when we talk about natural pass rush, that means you're able to get to the quarterback with just 4. Miami is going to have to blitz in this ball game to get to Bryce Young. Even if they do blitz, I still don't think they're going to get home, because Alabama's going to reinstitute some of that RPO you saw with Tua when he was the quarterback for the University of Alabama. Quick throws. And when those Alabama wide receivers get in space, watch out, because it's going to be a lot of open field there in the Mercedes-Benz Dome. And I expect Alabama to absolutely run Miami off the field. New wide receiver, can you tell me about him? Are you talking about the transfer from Ohio State, Williams, Alabama Roll Tide? If so, I can give you my notes on him. Let me just flip to the Ohio State page because at the time we were working on this, he was still with Ohio State. So if you're talking about Jameson Williams last year, not a lot of plays. Pretty much their two top targets, and I'm talking about Ohio State, was Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. So Williams had 9 receptions, 154 yards, 17.1 yards per catch, and 2 receiving touchdowns. Here's why Alabama got him. Alabama got him simply because he's a veteran wide receiver who's used to playing in some big time games. And okay, so yes. So Alabama was going to be really inexperienced in the wide receiver room. John Mechie and Slade Bowden, really the only 2 wide receivers that played any meaningful snaps at the wide receiver spot that was coming back for Alabama. So adding a young man who had been at the collegiate level, played at a big time program like Ohio State, I think that will be why he was brought in. Now, how much he plays and how many targets he gets for Alabama, who knows? But just to kind of give you an idea of what we could expect from him, last year John Mechie would have been the 3rd wide receiver behind Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle. And Mechie had 47 receptions, 835 yards. So if you got that same kind of production from Jameis Williamson, I think that Alabama's going to be fine at wide receivers. And whoever would have thought Alabama would have produced in the last 2 years 4 first-round picks at the wide receiver spot. So if you guys want, I can kind of touch on the Ole Miss Louisville game. I think that this is going to be an absolute air show by Ole Miss in this contest. I think that this is like Alabama, Miami. I think this is a complete mismatch of a ball game. Ole Miss brings back their Heisman Trophy contending quarterback in Matt Corral, a talented running back room in Jerrion Ely, Snoop Connor, and Henry Parrish. Also, Louisville loses so much as far as their production, as far as their wide receivers, running backs. Pretty much it's going to have to be the Malik Cunningham show, both running the ball and passing the ball. Let me see if I can pull that up for you real quick. No, we don't need to see that. I'll get out here. Okay. So Malik Cunningham, barely a 55% completion percentage, 12 touchdowns. 20 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. As long as Ole Miss doesn't turn the ball over, and we've seen Matt Corral have some of those blow-up games where he absolutely turned the ball over. As long as Corral doesn't turn the ball over in this ball game, I expect Ole Miss to win by at least 13 points in this ball game. If there's any other SEC games this weekend you want me to weigh in on, I would gladly do so. Yes, Alabama can definitely run the ball a lot in this ball game. So Miami's best defensive lineman, Silvera, I believe it is, he's nursing an undisclosed injury. Miami basically closed down practice to all of the media. So reporters weren't able to find out exactly what that injury was. He's listed as a backup in this ball game, so that lets you know for a guy that's been in the program as long as he's been in it, for him to be listed as a backup, he's going to play very limited snaps. I think Alabama's going to line up and absolutely blow Miami off the ball, and we saw that last year when North Carolina ran the ball 54 times for 555 yards, and I believe it was 5 rushing touchdowns in that ball game. So I certainly think that Miami will have a difficulty stopping the Alabama ground game. And once those safeties start to creep up in the box, that's when you're going to see Alabama take some big time deep shots in this ball game. I appreciate that comment, Will. So, just talking about, and I believe it looks like you are a Georgia fan. Is that right? If so, if Georgia's going to win this contest, and I'll gladly touch back on that here. Georgia's going to win this ball game. They absolutely must play to their strengths, and that's using the backs out of the backfield, swing passes, wheel routes, kind of like what Alabama did to Georgia last year, and especially what Florida did in the cocktail party game. You have to keep those slower linebackers, and I think Nolan Turner, I believe it is, and give me just a second. Let me see if I can get the other safety name. Landon Zanders. I want to keep them on the field as much as possible because I don't think that Georgia has an advantage throwing outside against whether it's Jones or Andre Booth. Booth is potentially a late first round, early second round pick in next year's draft. So with Blaylock and what's your other wide receiver? I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the names. Curious Jackson, sorry, with both Burton and Jackson being hampered off of injuries. From what I understand, Jackson should be a full go. Burton is kind of touch and go whether he's going to um, be able to go full speed in this ball game, and if not, that's really just going to limit what Georgia can do on the outside. I think Georgia would be much better suited throwing to those three running backs, Zamir White, Kendall Milton, and James Cook. I would want to see those three combined for anywhere between 15 and 17 receptions in this ball game because if I'm getting those linebackers for Clemson in space, I think that is an absolute home run for the University of Georgia there. But if Georgia's going to try to play 3 and 4 wide receivers, I don't think that that's the kind of matchup that's going to allow Georgia to really dictate what what Clemson can stop as far as on the defensive side of the ball. I think Clemson on the opposite side of the ball is going to absolutely spread out this Georgia defense, especially that secondary. Tyreek Smith, who was projected to be a starting corner for Georgia, the transfer from West Virginia, is out in this ball game. Kendrick, who does transfer from Clemson, who's going to know some of the play calls, know some of the signals, but here's the flip side of that. They're going to know, and I mean, the offensive coordinator, Tony Elliott, is going to know the tendencies for this young man. What does he like to bite on? Is he aggressive in certain packages? And if Clemson spreads Georgia out in this ball game, Ringo, Kimber are going to be on the field a lot in this ball game. Don't know if I want to see a bunch of redshirt freshmen who doesn't have a lot of snaps in this ball game to play that much in this ball game. All right, Alabama, Roll Tide. Hey, have a great rest of your night, and hopefully for all of your Alabama fans, Saturday afternoon goes really well. And guys, we're going to go for about another 15 minutes, so please feel free to post any of your questions in the chat. Love the interaction. Can't thank you all enough for chiming in, whether it's on the YouTube channel or however you're streaming this recording. So as far as the SEC goes, I think a game that I'm going to be interested to watch, and that will be that Louisiana Monroe Kentucky ball game, just because it'll be the first look that we'll get of this new Kentucky offense with Will Levis as the quarterback. Want to see how Liam Cohen is going to incorporate Wandale Robinson for Kentucky, and just this offense overall for Kentucky. And I want to see if Kentucky's made any improvements on the back end of the secondary. Lost a great linebacker that's playing with the Washington football team in Davis. So replacing that leadership at the linebacker spot is going to be key for them. Weston, hey, thanks for chiming in. How do I think Joe Milton did tonight? Are we trying to grade this on a curve, or am I giving my my honest opinion here? Because if I'm grading it on a curve, I would say C minus. And the reason I would say C minus is because I thought really Josh Heupel did a terrible job in this ball game calling plays. Milton did not have, like I said, spring practice there. Really just got on the campus maybe 6 weeks ago, so it wasn't a really good game there by Josh Heupel as far as setting his quarterback up for success in this ball game. Anytime your quarterback completes 11 for 23 passes, I'm going to grade that as an F. I mean, with the RPO, with the way the game is structured now, quarterbacks should be completing 60 to 65% just by being average. So for him to be barely above 50%, not a good performance there. Thought he missed a lot. I should say two. Thought he missed two really good opportunities to hit some deep touchdowns. Won't grade him too harshly on that because, like I said, that probably is a timing thing where he doesn't have the relationship with these wide receivers. I mean, they're just really starting to get a feel for each other. And I thought that it was an excellent play calling. I think that that's just something that has to do with timing there. So there was some things that Tennessee could definitely take away from this ball game. Did not like the fact that you're playing one of the worst teams in college football and you barely go, let's see, 55% on third down conversions. That's not good, especially once you step up in class and once you get into the SEC. 1 for 3 on fourth downs. Still not a good ratio. Like I said, against a team that you should definitely be outclassing by quite a bit there. And I'm just checking to see if there's any update whatsoever on the offensive lineman Mays there to see if. Okay, so they're saying a sprained ankle and will probably get X-rays done here in the next day or so. So they're going to probably see if there's any swelling in that ankle, and if so, they're going to see if it's a low ankle sprain, which he would probably miss maybe a week, so he may not be available for that Pitt game. And if it's a high ankle sprain, you're talking about him missing significant time um, with that kind of injury. Where you saw it has a oh, absolutely has a lot of arm talent. As far as the athleticism, um, okay as an athlete. He's more of a I don't want to compare him to Cam Newton, but I would say just from a running standpoint, he's not going to run away from a lot of guys. So he's not a Lamar Jackson type, if you will, a Michael Vick, if you will. He's more of a um, almost like a Dak Prescott um, as far as being able to run some power. And you saw that on a couple of touchdowns where he was basically able to go around the end off a zone keep. I talked about the two missed touchdowns. Like I said, I think that's more of a timing issue. Decision making that could be helped with the head coach calling a much better game from that standpoint. And I'm just checking something here. Let's see. Okay, so that would be my concern just in week one. Now, want to give him the Pitt game and the Tennessee Tech game for sure, just to see um, Weston. And thanks for checking in. Want to see if we see some improvement as far as that completion percentage goes, because if you're talking about completing less than 50% in conference play, not going to be good whatsoever. Oh, definitely. Watching the game, saw some drop passes, and like I said, I would have rather seen from a play calling standpoint, Weston, for Heupel to get him some high percentage throws and just some quick flare passes, quick screen passes, just to get him some confidence going, and then work on some of those deep shots. So I would have liked to seen a better game called by Josh Heupel there. And this is something that Heupel is going to have to get acclimated really quickly here in the SEC. It's You're going to face much better defenses than you did at UCF. Scott Frost is finding that out at Nebraska, and my God, he plays in the Big Ten. The speed in the SEC, you're not going to have where I saw Milton basically stand back and just pat the ball 3-4 times. You're not going to do that once you get into conference play. The speed at the defensive line position in this conference, as you guys all know, it's NFL caliber. And especially when you face elite defenses like Tennessee's going to face with Alabama, with Georgia especially, who can put pressure on the quarterback, he's going to have to speed up his decision making. And your head coach is definitely, if you're a Tennessee fan, definitely going to have to improve on that. Like I said, guys, I'm here for you for the next couple of minutes, but love the interaction and look forward to doing these post game shows with you here on the Voice of College Football with Mark Rogers TV, talking college football, because we know in this conference it does just mean more. Okay, Weston got another question. Play calling. I wouldn't go that far. I think Weston, I would say it got conservative just because the numbers on defense, and I talked about this at the beginning of the show. Tennessee lost 7 guys just out of the linebacker room. Um, Throw in a couple of guys off the defensive line. You don't have the numbers to run that air raid offense um, that Hypo wants to run, that Mike Leach offense. When you don't have the bodies on defense, the more snaps that you run on offense, you're going to expose your defense to a lot more snaps. So I thought it was actually a smart decision by Hypo to call a lot more run plays, especially in the second half, just to keep that defense off the field. So I wouldn't say it was too conservative, but if you take a look at the past coaches there, and I'm guessing that you're a Tennessee fan here, Butch Jones was actually quite successful there at the University of Tennessee, except for his last season. So it's you want to see a balance if you're Tennessee, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to use up a lot of plays on the defensive side of the ball before you get into conference play. I would um, I would advise Josh Heupel to put this same game plan um, in the third week of the season versus Tennessee Tech. Work on some of the passing game, but once you get up in the second half, absolutely take the air out of the ball, get your defense off the field, because once you get in the conference play, and I talked about this as well, you're going to face 5 of the top 6 rushing offenses in the SEC this year. The only team that you don't get is Texas A&M, who had the second best rushing attack. So you're going to face in a 6-week period, including your bye week, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Alabama. You get your bye, and then you get Kentucky, and finish that stretch off with the University of Georgia. If you're going to have that kind of team plan, I would maybe pump the brakes on that just a little bit there. Good speed on defense. Playing Bowling Green, I'm not going to judge that speed against a team that you were just completely better than. It's almost like, heck, you're playing. Name one of the high schools there in Knoxville. That's where I basically put this Bowling Green team at. This team should probably be playing at the FCS level um, instead of Division One, as I still call it. So I'll be careful with the good speed on defense. Were there some good things that you could take away from this? Absolutely, but like I said, pull back on that. Just given the opponent that you played in this ball game. And guys, before we end the show, definitely want to thank my good friend Mark Rogers for allowing me to host this post game show. Typically with the SEC, we don't have a Thursday night game, but because um, Thursday night show, but because we had a SEC team playing in a standalone game tonight, definitely wanted to get some instant reaction right after the ball game. Usually we would do these on Saturday night after the full SEC slate had wrapped up, and pretty much we would probably be looking to start somewhere late in the fourth quarter like we did tonight. So be sure to catch Mark Rogers. If you haven't already subscribed, please head over and hit that subscribe button so you can get all the notifications for all of the fantastic shows that Mark Rogers does. So looking forward to hosting the show, and looking forward to being back on Saturday night. We'll have, I think, all but one SEC team in action on Saturday. And of course, that's Ole Miss. They'll be playing Monday night, and we'll probably recap that on next week's show. But looking forward to a great weekend of SEC football, and can't wait to really have some really great statistics for you guys once we get into conference play. Getting those numbers from my site, the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network. Also, would like for you to head over and follow us on Twitter. I'm going to put that banner up here in just a moment. You can give my team a follow at Crunch Time VIP, and also check out our website at the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network, where you're going to get a lot of great analysis, really in-depth breakdown of these matchups, especially when we're talking about big-time games in the SEC. So really can't wait to incorporate that. And then once we get into conference play, we're going to add a call-in feature to those shows. So you'll not only be able to ask your questions online here through the chat feature, but you'll also be able to call in because, like I said, it's all about the fans. And speaking with Mark, we do these shows because we want your interaction. We want your thoughts, your feedback, because this is the best conference in all of college football. You are the best fans, and we want to give all 14 teams in the SEC some kind of coverage. So regardless of who they may be playing that week, we'll at least touch on the game throughout the show. And once we get into some of those bigger matchups, I'll try to loop in some of my my game analysis as those games are kicking off or as they are starting to wrap up. So anything that you would like to see added on these wrap-up shows, please feel free to drop those in the chat. Even after the broadcast is finished, I will gladly go back and answer those and give you as much detail, as much insight as I possibly can, because like I said, we do these shows for the fans. Love your interaction. Can't thank you all enough for welcoming me into the Mark Rogers TV family, and looking forward to giving you the absolute best and honest analysis that I can give you. If your team plays well that weekend, definitely going to give you credit. If there's some things that I think that the team could improve on, we'll definitely do so. And want to do it in a way to where it's almost like constructive criticism. So you'll never see me attack a player for missing a play or missing a kick, but we'll address issues that are on the field. So for my entire team at the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network, Brittany, Summer, Billy, this is Kenneth. Thanks for watching the show. Have a great night. SEC.